I'd like to let you know that also Bill Falloon has been relentlessly working on age reversal research initiatives. And he asked me to let you know that he will be back with us again in October. And of course, you can see him in action at the RADFest in September. The RADFest, it's the 9th annual RADFest, is coming September 5th through the 8th in Los Angeles. And if you'd like more information or tickets, just go to the RADFest website. That's RAAD-FEST, RAAD Fest. It stands for Revolution Against Aging and Death, fest.com. Next month, our services will be in Zoom August the 22nd, and we will have an open microphone night, an open mic night where you can come and bring your ideas on age reversal and extreme longevity. Meanwhile, many of us here at the church have just returned from the Teens to 20s Cryonics meeting and the Global Cryonics Summit in Miami. At these meetings, we met with cryonicists from all around the world. Amazing connections were made and great information was shared. It was a phenomenal event, and I'm hoping that they will make this an annual event. If you are interested in cryonics, if you're curious about it, you can find many resources at the Social Hall library that we have in person, or just reach out to me online. I'll be very happy to talk with you in person or communicate with you and get you more information about cryonics. Please join us as we recite our creed. Here at Perpetual Life, we believe that all of life is sacred and that we have been given this one life to make unlimited. We believe in our Creator's divine plan for all of humanity to have infinite lifespans in perfect health and eternal joy, rendering death to be optional. By following our gospel, we achieve eternal life, creating a heaven here on earth. We follow Nikolai Fedorov, who taught that the transcendence of the Creator will only be solved when humanity, in our unified efforts, become an instrument of universal resuscitation, when the divine word becomes our divine action. And we follow Arthur C. Clarke, who said, the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. And so we enter each day energized in spirit and empowered by the words of our prophets to live in joy, serving our Creator and all of mankind forever and ever. If you're online and you'd like to make a donation, you can find a donation link at the top of our website at perpetual.life. And we appreciate your donations. They help us to continue these meetings and to make them even better as we go into the future. Tonight, we have a wonderful presentation for you. Our speaker tonight is Dr. Ray Matthews, Unleashing the Power of Vitamin D. Dr. Ray Matthews celebrates many years' experience in his professional network and has been noted for his achievements, leadership qualities, and the credentials and successes he has accrued in his field. He is known as one of the top vitamin D experts in the world. Dr. Matthews is currently a full-time faculty member at Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta in the Department of Surgery. He was appointed as a full professor of clinical surgery in the fall of 2018, and he also serves as the director of surgical critical care and trauma surgery. Again, please make note of your questions and help me to welcome Ray Matthews with his presentation, Unleash the Power of Vitamin D. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you. So I'm a retired surgeon, trauma surgeon, basically since 2019. I retired actually 1 month before the pandemic started. So when I was at Grady in 2019, my last year working, we saw over 6,000 trauma patients. We were the 4th busiest trauma center in the country at the time. So they're even busier now because the 2nd trauma center shut down actually last year. So they're probably seeing 8,000 to 12,000 patients a year at the present time. So by the end of this lecture, you should understand what vitamin D deficiency is. Vitamin D is a steroid hormone. It's not a steroid, but it's a hormone. Actually, when I did a talk with Coach Nick Saban and Coach Kirby Smart, the head football coaches at the University of Georgia and the University of Alabama, my chairman called me in the office. He said people at the school were talking about that I had told these coaches that vitamin D is a steroid, and I was trying to get them on steroids. I said, no, you do not understand. Vitamin D is a steroid hormone. It's not a steroid, and it's totally legal. Vitamin D actually is, like I said, it's a hormone. So it controls 3,000 out of 30,000 genes in the human body. So that's 10% of your DNA. And so I said, if you learn all the things that vitamin D can do, I basically can do more things with vitamin D than George Washington Carver did basically with the peanut. It's the most common nutritional deficiency in the world. There are really 8 billion people in the world, and so probably half of those folks, 4 billion, are vitamin D deficient. So one thing that vitamin D does is it stimulates your immune system and downregulates your inflammatory response system. It was recently in Forbes magazine back in February, and they described me as a surgeon in vitamin that could change healthcare worldwide. So I have a patent on vitamin D, heat shock protein, and glutathione. So these three things is a pill in one. So it works on all the neurodegenerative diseases, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, strokes, CTE, and traumatic brain injury. So when they were writing my article, they actually asked me, what do you think your patent to bring in the first year? I said, like $5 million. They said, you're way off. They said, with a patent like that, we expect this to bring in $4 billion the first year alone, worldwide. Because there's nothing in the world right now that treats Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and all these different diseases, these neurodegenerative diseases. So these are some of the magazines that I've been in recently. The Millennial magazine is a worldwide magazine. Ebony, Black Enterprise, Forbes, Sports Illustrated, New England Journal of Medicine, which is a top medical journal in the world. So I've been to article in that. So the chance of a surgeon being in New England Journal of Medicine is very rare. Whoever thought I would be in a Glamour magazine? And I was in Glamour magazine. I've spoken at the CDC twice. They've invited me back for a third time in November this year. I've spoken at the FDA 6 times. That was a record back when I was speaking at the FDA. FDA's background was that a vitamin cannot treat any diseases at all. However, I said, how do you treat scurvy? Scurvy is treated with vitamin C. I said, how do you treat night blindness? It's treated with vitamin A. I said, so that's a misnomer that vitamins cannot treat diseases. I said, actually, vitamin D is not a vitamin, it's a hormone. This is like the Royal Society of Medicine in London, England. And I didn't even know they knew my name. So in this Royal Society of Medicine is one of the most prestigious societies, been around since the late 1700s. Actually, King Charles, Prince Philip, Prince Andrew, Charles Darwin is in this group. These are people that have made significant worldwide contributions to medicine. So I never thought I'd get in a group like that. And like I said, this is a New England Journal of Medicine. Surgeons very seldom get published in the New England Journal of Medicine. So I call vitamin D, I'm a religious man. Actually, I'm from a long family of ministers. My uncle was a minister, my dad was a minister, and my cousin's a minister, my brother's a minister. So I call vitamin D, or hormone D, God's miracle vitamin. Why do I call it that? Because it's safe, it's cheap, and it's effective. And then, like I said earlier, it controls 3,000 out of 30,000 genes. So 80% of people in the United States are vitamin D deficient. 80% of hospitalized patients are vitamin D deficient. And everybody's vitamin D level drops in the wintertime in the United States because we're in the northern hemisphere. So in order to make vitamin D, you need the sun at a 90-degree angle. And so we're just like crops or plants. And so it's just like you can't grow any plants and the crops in the United States in the wintertime. So you can't make any vitamin D in the early fall, late fall, in the wintertime either, because the sun in the wintertime, the earth rotates, and so the sun drops to a 45-degree angle. So the southern hemisphere is the exact opposite. They can make vitamin D in our winter, And then when we're in our summer, they can't make vitamin D either. So you can only make vitamin D from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So if you go outside right now, even though you can make vitamin D after 3 p.m., you're not going to make any because you have different wavelengths. You have UAB, then you have UAA. So you can't make any vitamin D with the UA wavelength. That's how you get your sunburn, your skin cancers, your melanomas, your basal cells, carcinoma. So you can only make vitamin D 9 to 3. So a person like me that worked 80 to 100 hours a week for 32 years, I never got outside. So I was always indoors. So I always had to supplement taking vitamin D. So that's why your level drops in the wintertime because you can't make any vitamin D in the northern hemisphere. That's why you get the winter blues, you get colds and flus because your vitamin D level drops about 30% during the wintertime. I spoke at the Abu Dhabi annual International Vitamin D Conference about 3 times. And so here I'm presenting my findings on traumatic brain injuries when I start using vitamin D. So vitamin D is like neuropreventive. So it works on all the neurodegenerative diseases. So when I started vitamin D research back in 2007 at Morehouse, we noticed all our trauma patients that had severe head injuries were waking up and they were getting back almost to be 100% normal. And so we were dosing our patients with high dose vitamin D. So I pioneered high dose vitamin D using the 50,000 I use in patients, and everybody thought I was crazy. But what people don't know is that your vitamin D level drops 50% after being in the hospital only 24 hours. So if you came in with a vitamin D level of 30 on day 0, on day 1, your vitamin D level is going to drop to 50%. So other things that drop your vitamin D level, like steroid hormones that we sometimes used to use in the trauma patients, HIV medications will drop it even more. So your vitamin D level in the first 24 hours of entering the hospital may drop up to 80%. So I call hospital dark dungeons. This is me having my name engraved on the wall of honor in the Royal Society of Medicine in London, England. Like I said, Charles Darwin is in this group. Edwin Jenner that invented the smallpox vaccine, and other scientists. Like I said, I never thought a little country boy from Mississippi would get in the Royal Society of Medicine. So you have Prince Philip, King Charles now, Prince William, Charles Darwin, Louis Pasteur, pasteurization of milk, and Sigmund Freud. And this is outside the Royal Society of Medicine. It's about a mile from the King's Palace. Okay, and then there's Prince Philip, King Charles now, Sigmund Freud, Edwin Jenner, Louis Pasteur, Charles Darwin. Okay. All right, this is, we call this the Matthews Danner Ahmed graft. And in this graft, we grafted out, this is our first paper that we wrote. So you need vitamin D. Federal government says 30 of nanograms per milliliter is a normal vitamin D level. So basically, we challenged that in our paper, and we said 50 to 55 should be the normal level and not 30 nanograms per milliliter like the FDA and the federal government says in their FDA guidelines. Reason for that is if you went outside or you went out in nature and captured a lion, a tiger, an elephant, or whatever that lives in nature, all animals in nature have vitamin D levels that run between 50 and 55. So I said, who's smarter, God or Mother Nature, God or the federal government? So I think God wins that article hands down every time. So all animals, including humans, even though the federal government says 30 is normal, we should be between 50 and 55. Because when you start getting below 50 and 55, you start getting all type of diseases and all type of symptoms and all type of medical issues and problems. So we grafted out. We noticed these are our ICU patients at Grady Memorial when we were doing our research. So we noticed this is like death going down. So this is like when we got down to 13, the average person, when they got down to 13, guess what? Our death rate in our ICU patients went up. So it was a patient published in the Annuals of Medicine when they said that vitamin D levels less than 18 nanograms per milliliter associated with a 30% increase in mortality rate. So if you go in the hospital with a heart attack, a stroke, traumatic brain injury, gunshot wound to the abdomen, coronavirus, or pneumonia, so anything, you increase in your risk if your vitamin D level is less than 18. You increase your risk of dying by 30%. And that's all causes, all patients. So vitamin D is cheap. So why would I not give my patients something that's going to lower their mortality rate by 30%? And then when we got to our second inflection point, when people start having blood levels, these are blood draws that we got on all our patients, their vitamin D levels. So when they started getting up a blood level of 26 nanogram per milliliter, we noticed that our death rate decreased. We almost had 0 patients to die when they were above 26. So federal government says 30. So 30 just gets you to a level where you just stop dying in the hospital. So then we got to 40 nanograms per milliliter. This is a physiologic place where we had 0 deaths in our ICU patients once they got above 40 nanograms per milliliter. 40 nanograms per milliliter is also sufficient to keep you from getting rickets and broken bones and things like that. Then you get maximum muscle density at 40 nanograms per milliliter. So this is important for athletes and stuff. So I've worked with athletes since 27, and we noticed that these patients were stronger, they were faster, they could jump higher, and they could play football 4 quarters without even getting tired. So you get maximal muscle density, or you increase your fast twitch muscle fibers. You have 2 types of muscle fibers. You have fast twitch and slow twitch. Fast twitch muscle fibers are important for basketball players, tennis players, or football players, people that need a lot of energy or a lot of power right away. So we noticed, so vitamin D increases athletic performance also in all sports, swimmers and any other sport too. And this is where we looked at the white blood cell count in our African American patients and then our Caucasian patients. And so African Americans usually have lower vitamin D levels because they have melanin in their skin, and melanin blocks vitamin D production by 98%. So African Americans tend to run like 30% lower vitamin D levels than Caucasian Americans. And so we show that the average African American in our ICU had a vitamin D level of 13. Average Caucasian is like 18 and 19. Remember, I said when your vitamin D level gets less than 18 or 19, the risk of death goes up 30%. So what we learned through our research is that most healthcare disparities are not due to socioeconomics, they're due to lower vitamin D levels by 30%. So once we develop a method to get everybody's vitamin D level up at the same level, guess what? Death rates for both groups equalized. Nobody was dying any faster than anybody else. Okay, and this is what we looked at, the different levels of different groups, African-American females, we looked at African-American males, Caucasian females, Caucasian males. So the lowest vitamin D level was in the African-American females, 9.58 vitamin D levels on initial blood draw in the ICU. African-American males was 11.63, and Caucasian Americans were around 18. And stuff. And guess what? The African American females had the lowest vitamin D level. They had the highest mortality rate at 14.6. So the African American females had the lowest vitamin D level, but they had the highest mortality rate. So, and in addition to that, they also had a higher cost in the ICU. So the lower your vitamin D levels, the higher your mortality rate and the higher your ICU cost. The ICU bed costs $4,000 a day just to park in the room. I'm not adding a ventilator or a dialysis or whatever. So once we start getting everybody's vitamin D level up, the mortality rate of the African American females dropped down to the mortality rate with other groups, and their cost to stay in ICU save money. So when I got to Grady was $100 million in debt. And so using high dose vitamin D, in about 4 years, Grady was making $30 million with the trauma division making more money than all other divisions basically put together. So vitamin D is important in lowering mortality rate and saving money. So I spoke at the UN and I've spoken at the CDC and the FDA, and I told them that basically if we got everybody's in the United States vitamin D level, we could save $1 trillion in healthcare costs. Right now we spend $4.4 trillion. Then we could use that money to pay down a debt, which is $34 trillion now. So there are ways to get out of debt just by normalizing vitamin D levels, which something you can go to Walmart or Targets and buy for $15. So it's a cheap solution that gives you a lot of benefits. That's what I told the UN. This was in 2018, and basically told them we were going to have a pandemic. I didn't know the name coronavirus, and I said it's going to spread around the world like wildfire because half of the world's population is vitamin D deficient. We could have wiped out this coronavirus with high dose vitamin D. Actually, I submitted a proposal to the NIH and FEMA, and they told me to take the vitamin D part out. I think they were just waiting on, this was before the vaccines. I think they're just waiting on the vaccines to come out, because what vitamin D does is it increases your white blood cell count. And that's what fights infections in your body. So vitamin D fights viral infections, bacterial infections, parasitic infections, and it's also important in cancer surveillance. Mayo Clinic put out an article saying all women who are breast cancer survivors need to be on vitamin D lifelong. Mayo Clinic is ranked #1 healthcare research institution in the world where I trained. Even in childbirth, you know that African-American women have a higher mortality rate. And you see with a 9.58, vitamin D is a anti-stress hormone. So anytime your body is stressed, it needs vitamin D. Pregnancy is a stressful state, heart attack, strokes, coronavirus, traumatic brain injuries. So anything to stress your body, you need higher vitamin D. Because remember I said when you're sick, go in the hospital, your vitamin D level drops 30%. So if the government says 30 is normal, you're going to be 15 the next day. So it should be higher just based on research. So most of these disparities, and we determined that disparities only due to, whether you're poor or no money or whatever, it's only due to like 18% of the disparities. So it's more of a biologic problem. So if you get everybody's vitamin D equalized, the disease rate basically dropped to almost the same in all groups. So I wrote another paper, Economic Impact of Vitamin D Level when it's less than 18 on hospitals and third-party payers. In my next life, I'm going to come back as president of an insurance company, a medical insurance, because all my patients in my medical insurance are going to be on vitamin D, and most of them will never, ever get sick, and then those that do get sick don't get out of the hospital. And by getting everybody's vitamin D level up, we cut 3-4 days off the number of days that patients were in the ICU and in the hospital. Floor bed at Grady at the time when I retired was $1,400 a day. So I told my residents, if I ever get sick, operate on me and transfer me to the Ritz-Carlton where I can get a suite for $300 or $400 a night versus a $1,400 a day per bed. An ICU bed costs $4,000 a day. So basically, by getting everybody's vitamin D level up, we also cut our heart attack rate and our stroke rate by 50%. So that saves the hospital a lot of money, people not having heart attacks and strokes. So all of this is published research in the Critical Care Medicine, which is the top critical care medicine journal, basically. So other things I was able to do with vitamin D, like I said, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was able to reverse congestive heart failure using high dose vitamin D. So vitamin D increases calcium absorption. Calcium is basically an inotrope, or it helps the heart and muscles contract. So basically putting patients on high dose vitamin D that had congestive heart failure, your heart should eject 75% of blood with each beat. And when your heart starts ejecting less than 50%, that's considered congestive heart failure. So we had patients that got down to 15, 20%. So using high dose vitamin D, I was able to get their ejection fracture up to 40%. And a lot of these people who could not walk with oxygen begin to be able to walk upstairs. So this was published also in a journal. So yeah, the Global Journal of Medicine and Clinical Case. So high dose vitamin D, we used this Joxin, which is an old ionotropin bideal. We were able to reverse congestive heart failure in patients. And how vitamin D affects, vitamin D3 affects cells, which show is able to repair damage to the heart brought back by metabolic conditions. So in heart attacks, even if they do have a heart attack, it can reverse a lot of the damage other than those heart cells dying. They get congestive heart failure, it can reverse the congestive heart failure. So these are some cheap ways to help the heart. So actually, I'm telling the cardiologist what to do at Grady and surgeon. So here is this Mayo Clinic article, breast cancer survivals and vitamin D. Recent evidence has suggested a role for vitamin D in breast cancer prevention and survival. So it prevents and increases survival in women. This last sentence down here from Mayo Clinic says maintaining adequate vitamin D stores is recommended for breast cancer survivors throughout their lifetime. So this is was published in, you see, Mayo Clinic, Jacksonville. So vitamin D is important for basically men with prostate cancer too, because it basically works in most cancers. And so what it does is most cancers are caused by chronic inflammation. So vitamin D downregulates the chronic inflammation that your body produces. Therefore, it can prevent and treat prostate cancer. I have a brother-in-law that was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Anybody knows anything about pancreatic cancer? Pancreatic cancer, most people die within 6 months. So that's one of the most deadliest cancer we have is pancreatic cancer that sits behind your stomach. So I started my brother-in-law on high-dose vitamin D in early 2020, and guess what? He's still alive, still active, still moving around. 4 years later, you don't survive pancreatic cancer 4 years. And so all the people that I put on high-dose vitamin D for pancreatic cancer, most of them live more than 2 years. And more than the 6 months, that is how long it normally lasts. So it's very important in cancer survival. Remember, I told you earlier that I call vitamin D God's miracle vitamin because it can do so many different things. 90% of vitamin D comes from the skin striking your sun. You only get 10% of vitamin D from your diet. And it's usually seen only in the fatty fish, mackerel, salmon, tuna, and some mushrooms. So most of your vitamin D comes from the sun striking your skin. So we've made a deal with the dermatologist. Dermatologists don't want you in the sun ever. So we made a deal, go out in the sun, 15 minutes, and then put your sunscreen on. So we both agreed to that go out in the sun between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. And after 15 minutes, put your sunscreen on so you don't get skin burn and all the cancers. Okay, so one of the deadliest breast cancers for women is triple negative breast cancer. This has no treatment other than vitamin D. So we had breast surgeons at Grady. One of the hardest things was convincing the breast surgeons to put their patients on vitamin D. So it works very well. Like I said, vitamin D works well in cancer prevention and cancer treatment. And this is out of Mayo Clinic. Studies suggest that those who have chronic pain may need to access their vitamin D levels. So this is a colleague of mine at Mayo Clinic, Dr. Michael Turner. He found out that if your vitamin D level is low, you have more pain. So you require more narcotics. You require more fentanyl and Percocet. So basically, we can probably cut the narcotic dependence in the United States basically by getting people's vitamin D level up. Most of the drug addict patients I have, after they were trauma patients, we saw them back in clinic, we had gotten their vitamin D levels up. Most of them didn't want any more pain meds after their first visit. Whereas previously, we used to have to hide the prescription to show patients were still in prescriptions trying to write their own prescriptions for pain because they were drug addicts. And so all that decreased after we started giving them that. Like I said, Mayo Clinic is still ranked. It was just ranked 2 weeks ago as the #1 research and hospital healthcare clinic in the world. So they've been #1 for the last 18 years. This is like a paper written by a second group after I discovered that vitamin D works on the brain in terms of traumatic brain injuries. So they use progesterone with omega-3 fatty acids, glutamine, and vitamin D, which I was already using. And they actually verified all the research I said, and so it works in traumatic brain injuries. And you see, when I said earlier that vitamin D is important in athletic performance, I would start working with my nephew when he was 8th grade. So he made it all the way to the Denver Broncos, but guess what he did? He stopped taking vitamin D and broke his wrist and went on injured reserve. So once you go on injured reserve, he threw in the NFL. He went to a Canadian Football League, but even in the NFL, they were talking about what a specimen they were. They had never seen anything like him. He had 2% body fat. Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, super athletes, had 8% body fat. 2% body fat is unheard of. And he could bench press 450 and squat 550. And this guy was a 110-meter high hurdle champ at LSU in the SEC. And I think it was a Big 12. He's a 110-meter high hurdle champ at TCU also. So he was like 6'3", 225. So that's a big dude that can really run fast, and ran a 4.3 40-yard dash. And so you see vitamin D on muscle fibers with sedentary rats. So what vitamin D does is muscle fibers. Remember I said it increases your fast twitch muscle fibers, make it stronger, bigger, faster. And the high school team that I work with in Atlanta, Georgia, Martin Luther King Junior High School, was one of the poorer high schools. They did not have a weight room, but they were the fastest, biggest team in all of Georgia. Nick Saban and Kirby Smart were coming over to the high school to recruit these guys. First year I worked with them, they got 25 D1 scholarships. And there's only 22 players on the football field at one time. And then everybody thought it was a fluke. Next year, 24 players got D1 scholarship. So it increases, like I said, fast twitch muscle fibers for athletic performance in athletic events. So basically worked with Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, worked on ventilator-associated pneumonia. This is pneumonia you get when you're on the ventilator. So at Grady, we cut our ventilated-associated pneumonia rate from 80% down to 20%. So normally when you cut some 5-10% in medicine is considered big, but to go from 80% to 20% is like very unusual, very abnormal. So it works on all pneumonias too. So we could have saved a lot of lives by using high dose vitamin D with patients with coronaviruses on the ventilator. Okay, so this is the first paper we wrote: severe vitamin D deficiencies associated with worsened outcomes in surgical patients with ventilator-associated pneumonia. So like I said, we cut the incidence from 80% down to 20%. So the incidence of ventilator-associated pneumonia was 20% overall. This was in the Journal of American College of Surgeons. This is one of the top leading journals. So most of my papers were published in top journals. And even burn patients. So you give burn patients high dose vitamin D, you can help them heal faster, they have fewer infections, and they recover faster. You cut the hospital cost with that. So, and then this is like a mustard gas. So gases are illegal to use in war. So this guy got a grant. The only thing that worked against mustard gas was, guess what? Vitamin D. It cut the mortality of mustard gas will kill you quick. And so using vitamin D and for mustard gas patients, it cut the mortality rate by 40%. So remember I said I call it God's miracle vitamin because you can do so much with it. So protective role of vitamin D in regards to exposure to mustard gas. Like I said, it cut the mortality rate by 40%. And so no other agent does to mustard gas what vitamin D does. So this is a paper I wrote, high dose vitamin D supplementation reduces medical malpractice lawsuits in critically ill patients. I want you to see this and pay close attention to this. So I arrived at Morehouse in 2007. So prior to my arrival from 1995 to 2007, Morehouse had $26 million in medical malpractice lawsuits, Department of Surgery, Trauma, Critical Care, basically. Okay, so when I arrived in 2007 through this should be 2019 when I retired, we had 0 lawsuits. So we went from having $26 million in lawsuits prior to my arrival to 0 lawsuits after my arrival. So the hospital and the school, they saved $26 million just on paying lawsuits alone. So guess what happened to their malpractice insurance to cover all the surgeons and stuff? So it dropped tremendously. My boss wouldn't tell me exactly how much less they were paying because he figured I asked for a raise if he told me they were paying less money for malpractice lawsuits. So this is one of the things that helped turn around the money that Grady was losing. So vitamin D, remember the paper I showed you earlier, has economic impact. So it's just not for health, but it actually saves you money. So even if you're at home, single, a lot of medications. We've gotten patients off a lot of medications, so their monthly medical bills went down. Congestive heart failure patients had fewer reoccurrences or readmissions into the hospital. Heart attack, stroke patients healed. Stroke patients were returning to 100% and were able to go back to work. Traumatic brain injury patients were able to go back to school. I have a young lady, she was 18 at the time, had the worst traumatic brain injury. It was so bad, neurosurgeons didn't even want to put a boat in. I had to call the hospital administrators, get them to put a boat which drains the fluid in your head. And that young lady now graduated from the University of Georgia with 2 undergrad degrees. She graduated summa cum laude, GPA of 3.9 out of a 4 in order to have a super cum laude. She's now working on her PhD. Without the vitamin D, she would have been in a nursing home the rest of her life in a bed, being turned every 2 hours or 4 hours. Remember the early effects of vitamin D on skeletal, muscle, and athletic performance. So that is well established and stuff. And so the team that I was working with at MLK in football, they were so big and so strong and so powerful. They won a whole year with no concussion. That's unheard of in sports and in football. So 0 concussions because remember your skull is a bone, and you look at rams, they have a thicker skull. Ram skull about this thick, ours about that thick. So what happens when you collide and you spread in kinetic energy that goes through the bone into the brain, and so that kinetic energy reaches our brains and sloshes inside our head, creating image. But rams, when they're butting heads, they don't get concussions, they don't get brain damage, they keep butting heads. So their brain is stationary, and then all that energy is not transmitted to their brain, which is soft tissue versus the bone. Same with a woodpecker. A woodpecker slams his head into a tree 17,000 times a day. You've never seen a woodpecker fall out the tree with a concussion or have traumatic brain injuries and stuff. So vitamin D is very important in skeletal muscles and preventing concussions, and also cuts down the number of fractures. During the year in 2011, they only had 1 fracture the whole year. So it's very important, like I said, for speed too. So their track team, the girls track team, high school track team, had the fastest time in the whole country that year. And 2 of those girls, one of them went to LSU, the other one went to University of Tennessee, both SEC schools. And Felicia Brown, her name, the one that went to University of Tennessee, she had the fastest 200-meter dash time in the world in 2012. And so it works. And then I had the 2 fastest high schoolers in the country also at the same time. So it increases speed and all that. It improves muscle strength and athletic performance and stuff. So you get them above 40, they do well, they get hurt less, they're faster, they're bigger, they're stronger, they can do more. And the team that we worked with that year, they went 13-1 with 85 football players, no concussions and only 1 fracture. So Now, anybody familiar with Wall Street know Wall Street does not talk about anything less than millions of dollars. So Wall Street wrote a journal, they got wind of what I was doing. Elite athletes try more new training tactic, more vitamin D. And this is a Pittsburgh Steelers football team. I'm trying to work with the NFL right now. 80% of NFL football players are vitamin D deficient, because they have the helmets, they got the long pants on, the long shirts. So they think they're healthy. So I've spoken with a lot of NFL players and I asked them, do you have any deficiencies or do you think you have any deficiencies? No, we have the best nutritionists in the world. I'll say, but they're not telling you about vitamin D. So that's why you see NFL averages over 200 concussions a year. I'm kind of sort of talking to them now about cutting their concussions in half. So I can cut your concussions in half, give an opportunity to work with you because, like I said, I cut it to zero at Martin Luther King back in 2011. And like I said, your skull is a bone, so the thicker your skull is, less likely you are to get a concussion. So even Wall Street is now talking about how vitamin D decreases injuries, teams win championships, and it saves a lot of money. So if I can keep my team healthy all year and nobody gets seriously injured or hurt and not out, I should be able to go deep into the playoffs. Then more than half of college football athletes have inadequate vitamin D deficiency linked to muscle injuries. Actually, that should be 80%. It's higher than half. So all your college football players are mostly vitamin D deficient. That's why you see a lot of concussions, a lot of hamstring, groin tears. And this was done by the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons. This was presented at their annual meeting. So more people are beginning to realize the importance of vitamin D and F. Even swimmers. I worked with a young lady who was a swimmer. She used to come in last place all the time. So after she got on vitamin D, she was younger than the other athletes. She started winning all the swimming events and volleyball or whatever else. So this is an article I was telling you about. Alarming vitamin D deficiencies in NFL football players. So the vitamin D deficiency in NFL football players is 80%. Like I said, they can cut their, I told them I can cut your concussions in half, your muscle injuries, your hamstring injuries, or things that are high in the NFL and stuff, because nutritionists, very few people knew about vitamin D deficiency when I started doing all these different things. NFL players with higher vitamin D levels may get less cut. So if I'm a sports agent, and I got some guys trying to make the pros, I'm going to put them all on vitamin D. They're more likely to make the team because they're going to be faster, stronger, and bigger than the rest of the players. Okay. This is the research that we did in vitamin D. Remember, I tell you I have a patent for vitamin D, heat shock protein, and glutathione. And so basically, what we did was and the way you do research in cells, we use petri dishes and epithelial cells, which are human cells. So we put the human cells in, and the way you kill these human cells in the lab is you put hydrogen peroxide in it. So if you pour hydrogen peroxide in a petri dish with some epithelial cells, it should kill all of them, about 100%. So then we put various different concentrations of vitamin D in with these epithelial cells. So we put 100 nanograms per milliliter of vitamin D in with these controls. So 98% of these cells survived. Okay. So when we started giving them vitamin D at different after the injection, you see the number of cells went down and stuff. So only 28% of the cells survived in hydrogen peroxide, and only 60% of the cells survived here. And so what we did is we used vitamin D and heat shock protein, and this is the control. And so when we put vitamin D and heat shock protein in with the epithelial cells at the hydrogen peroxide, 82% of the cells survived. So then when we used heat shock protein and vitamin D, you see we got up to 96.5% of the cells survive. So we tried different substances and nothing does that. Heat shock protein is a protein made by your body. And so before my partner and I produced this patent, nobody was able to make heat shock protein commercially. So my partner, Dr. Sale, is like one of the top heat shock protein experts in the world. And so he's a basic scientist. And so basic scientists, I'm a clinical scientist, normally don't work together. So we worked together, put our heads together, and came up with this. And so actually, when he called and shared results with me, I told him to burn it because we need to hold this. We don't need to even shout this. I said, people get wind of this, man, we're cooked. And so we patented it before we even discussed it. Our patent lawyer told us do not discuss this with anybody because she even said this is going to be a world-changing event once we get this to market. So we were working to get this to market at the present time. So what we did at Morehouse, you see in 2015, we cut our mortality rate from like 12% down to 3%. That's unheard of in trauma surgery. So normally you talk about 5%, 10% cutting your mortality rate, but to go from 12% down to 3% is just totally unheard of in medicine, period, worldwide. So what made the difference in treating these? I'm talking about patients been shot in the head, the abdomen, multiple gunshot wounds, people in serious car accidents, and all comers. I had one patient fell 500 feet out the sky, survived. So the thing that adjusts this is like the thing that made a big difference in my practice was vitamin D. Okay, this gentleman here, he was in a gang. He was shot 15 times. So this guy, like I said, was shot 15 times. He was in a gang. He wanted to get out. So these guys, here and the rest of the guys, about 10 of them shot him 15 times at point blank range. So normally you get shot 10 times at point blank range, you're going straight to the morgue. You don't come to the hospital. So he still had a pulse on him. And so at the time, back in 2018, he was this was a person that had the most gunshot wounds that ever came to Grady and survived. And so they got him in witness protection program. He wanted to get out of the gang and he changed his life. And so he made the news because he got shot 15 times and survived. He got shot all up in his abdomen, his chest, and all around his heart, both lungs. So the thing that made the difference is the thing that kills most patients after gunshot wounds like this is the amount of infection that they have when bullets penetrate their colon. So vitamin D controls all this high spillage of stool in your belly and gets an infection under control where you can survive instead of dying. This is how busy Grady was. So this was probably my busiest, craziest night. So I operated on this guy. He was shot 14 times, just one less than the guy that got shot 15 times. And then I had a second patient came in about 2 hours later. I'm still operating on this guy. It was a 12-hour operation, so the operations overlapped by 10 hours. So he got shot 12 times. Both of these patients survived. And so that was probably my busiest night. And I don't think I was ever the same after these two operations because I had to go from room to room all night. This gentleman is special. This gentleman, Mark, he's parachuting, used to be in the Army. And so when his parachute hit 500 feet, it got tangled and he fell 500 feet, hit the ground about 85 miles an hour. And there happened to be a paramedic from Grady that was there, and he started CPR. He went in cardiac arrest, started CPR on him immediately. So he was airlifted to Grady, and you don't survive a 500-foot fall. Almost 100% of people don't survive a 50-foot fall, let alone a 500-foot fall and hit the ground at 84, 85 miles an hour and survive. We call this gentleman Humpty Dumpty. He basically broke everything in his body, basically. His lungs, his stomach was sitting up near his heart. And he had pelvic fractures. He had traumatic brain injury. He was in the hospital with us 3 months. And you would think that, cognitively he wouldn't be here. So he's on high-dose vitamin D. You see, this is him. He's healed up. He got married. I told him to start doing crossword puzzles on the internet, and he met his wife. She's from England, and she sent me some pictures from their wedding and wrote me a lovely letter. She said, "Thanks, Dr. Matthews. I had given up on life. I had given up on living. I wanted to be married. I never thought I'd get married." She said, "I didn't know you at the time, but you're saving my husband, Mark, and you telling him to do crossword puzzles on the internet. That's how I met him." So we started dating. I got married, and they live in Savannah, Georgia now, and they're on a bee farm. So Mark is driving. He's 100% normal and walking on his own, no cane, no nothing, and he's doing well. This is his mom. But so this is what vitamin D did for this gentleman and stuff, which is unheard of. So he made the Atlanta Journal Constitution, 500-foot fall, leaves man alive. This is my goddaughter. She was 17 at the time. She had just won head cheerleader back in 2012, hit a pothole in the road in her SUV, and it turned over 8 times and ejected her. It was so powerful. Even though she had a seatbelt on, she got ejected onto the interstate. And she was on the interstate season. And so having a seizure after a head injury is a bad prognosis, actually a terrible prognosis. So you see this picture here. This is a CT scan of her brain. So you should see another arch going over. So she has such bad swelling, it had occluded this area. This is cerebral spinal fluid, and you can't really make out the gyri real well. Your brain should be like crumpy. And this young lady, the mortality rate for this type of injury is 50% of these people die at the scene. They don't make it to the hospital. Out of the other 50%, 47% were in a chronic vegetative state. They go to a nursing home the rest of their life. 50% that do finally wake up, they're like cerebral palsy kids and stuff. And, so they never get back to normal. You see, this young lady, she's back to normal. She graduated high school on time after having this devastating injury. Neurosurgeons looked at this scan, so they normally put a boat in there to drain the fluid and that pressure. They refused to put a boat. They said she's going to die, no way she's going to make it. So I had to call the hospital administrators to get them to put a boat in her head. This is a special young lady. Her mother is a pediatric ER nurse. Her mother and father could not have kids, so they went through IVF 8 times just to have her. So now neurosurgeons telling them that this young lady, that they had to spend a lot of money to have and go through so many painful IVF trials is not going to survive. So I got the hospital administrator down, and I just basically I just need them to drill a hole. They don't even have to come see her. I'll take on my service. I said, you drill a hole, you don't even have to check on her. So when they came back to see her 3 days later, she's tracking with her eyes. The young lady that they said that wouldn't survive told us basically call them work. So she just got married about 2 years ago and graduated summa cum laude from the University of Georgia. She's now working on her PhD. So it seems like actually all my head trauma patients actually are smarter than what they were post-traumatic than they were before. This gentleman is an interesting gentleman. He was like using a chainsaw to cut some wood, and he hit a knot, and it basically severed everything on the right side of his neck down to the bone. So all the blood vessels, all the muscles, everything was just totally cut. So they brought him into Grady. There was a nurse on the stretcher with him doing CPR. He had a blood clot about the size of a football. And so, as usual, at Grady, it's so busy, your trauma surgeons are usually operating in 2-3 rooms at the same time. So once you get one stabilized, you go to the other room, and then you come back and check on all of them. So a 24-hour day at Grady is just unbelievable. So this gentleman, I was in the second room, and so they got in. And so 15 minutes later, my senior resident came and told me that, they had pronounced him dead. And they had taken him off the ventilator and pulled the cover over his heads. And so I have to see all the patients as the head trauma surgeon and write a note on them. So I go in a room next to a unit of blood hanging. And the nurse, I saw a finger twitch. And so I didn't pay much mind to it. I said, well, finish transfusing that unit of blood. His heart started beating, and I had to get my trauma team back in there. I had to clamp off all the vessels on the right side of his neck. We were able to sew him up and get him back. And he was in the hospital just 2 weeks, put him on high dose vitamin D, and he was back to normal. Like I said, this man was pronounced dead. And This is, I should have told you about this graphic picture. This is a lady. She worked at Emory University Hospital. She was driving to work about 6 o'clock in the morning, and there was a big thunderstorm. A lot of trees surround Emory, 100-foot tall old oak trees. And so this lady, a tree fell, went through her front windshield. It went all the way through her and came out the back. So they basically had to cut her off the tree and brought her in. So inside the wound, once we got the limb out, you don't take objects out, you leave them in so you don't bleed to death. But once we got the limb out, she had glass. She had pine cones in her, glass, dirt, and just everything you could believe. So this lady right here would 100% die. There's no pictures in the surgical textbook to tell you how to handle this, how to do this. So we put her on high dose vitamin D. I think she had about 15, 20 operations. And this is the limb coming out the back of her. This is her about a year later. She's up walking on her own, no cane, no walker. She's now retired, but she's living a good life, and she can do basic activities. She went on a cruise a year later after surviving that big impalement operation. This is like a major league. This is J.R. Richards. He's a major league baseball pitcher with the Houston Astros back in 1980. He basically had a undiagnosed narrowing of his superior subclavian artery. So they thought he was faking, saying he had a dead arm. So he had a stroke on the mound in the major leagues and had some residual weakness. You see, he's 6'6" and big guy. I'm 6'2". And this guy, after putting him on high dose vitamin D, he signed a baseball for me when I spoke at his church. And this guy, after having a stroke in his right arm and being on vitamin D, almost crushed my hand. And I can say I'm a big guy myself. This is Kirby Smart when I met with him at the University of Georgia. Kirby Smart's football team is on vitamin D. This is Coach Nick Saban. Nick Saban's football team is on what? Vitamin D. And then they both together, we know Nick Saban, Coach Nick Saban is retired now. So these two guys are very smart. They actually could be CEOs of countries. So they look for any edge that they can get. And they both put their players on vitamin D. They had fewer concussions. If you look at Alabama's and look at the University of Georgia players, they're just thick, they're big, they're fast, they're strong. They seldom get injured, and they're faster than everybody else. Nick Saban probably got the fastest receivers in the NFL now in the last 4 or 5 years. And these two won 5 out of the last 9 national championships. And this guy now is, I think, head coach of University of Oklahoma. University. He used to be a defensive coordinator, but he's head coach of University of Oklahoma. And this guy, Nick Broyles, is lived in Arkansas. He's dead now. He had dementia, Alzheimer's. So his daughter, who runs the Broyles Foundation, we put him on vitamin D, and he survived a little while longer. Look at Coach Broyles' coaching pedigree. He produced Super Bowl winning coach Jimmy Johnson, Joe Gibbs, and Barry Switzer. So he was a head coach at the University of Arkansas, won national championship in the 1960s. But it's very rare to have a pedigree like that, Super Bowl winners. And so I work with him real closely and still keep in contact with his daughter. I worked with Muhammad Ali for 5 years when I met him. This was a condition that he was in. He could not walk. He was in a wheelchair. So after working with him for about 5 years, I had him up walking on a walker. He actually could walk on a walker by himself about the 3rd, 4th year. And Parkinson's, that's where I started thinking. I had him on high dose vitamin D. He got better, but he still had the tremor. And I started thinking that I'm missing something with these other neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and dementia. So that's when we came up with the heat shock protein thing. And that was after he had passed. So, this is his wife, Lonnie. She sent me a thank you letter for working with Muhammad Ali during those 5 years and getting him better with high dose vitamin D. And when she comes to Atlanta, she usually call me and we'll go out to lunch. And so this is at Muhammad Ali's Sports Illustrated thing with Larry Holmes and Shaq and all other people. This young lady was the bronze medalist in the Olympics in 2016 in Rio de Janeiro, Christy Catlin. So she made her faster too. So she broke her personal best, or PR as they say. This is Norm Nixon, used to play with Magic Johnson and won championships with him. He was with Showtime Lakers. And so the reason he had to retire early was because he had a nagging Achilles injury that he never could get better. So put him on high dose vitamin D, and his Achilles got better where he can, play basketball, leisurely again. And so he came to Martin Luther King High School to see what are you doing with these athletes, and how do you do it and stuff. And so he showed them some basketball moves and things that they could do. This is Sam Lacey. He played against all the greats. He was a center from my hometown. He's a big vitamin D advocate. He's going to hook me up with the Sacramento Kings. Steph Curry's team, he played there 13 seasons, but he died of a ruptured gallbladder about a month before we were supposed to set that up. Okay, and then these are three guys that got all invited to the Olympics. My nephew at LSU, he was a SEC 110-meter high hurdle champion. And I told you earlier, like Felicia Brown had the fastest time in the world in the 200 meters in that year. And Jada, she was part of LSU's team. So all these kids were getting SEC scholarships. We're looking at all my kids from MLK. They were big, they were fast, and they were exceptional athletes. And so she had the fastest time in the world at 22.26. My nephew, you see this guy 6'3", 225, and he's jumping over hurdles 2053 to win the SEC championship. Nick Saban came out to see him run to win the championship because he was worried about playing against him. And he ran at football, but he couldn't play at LSU because he only had 1 year eligibility left, but he could run track. These were the two fastest high schoolers in the country at that time. And they were both ranked number one. This is my nephew. He was ranked number one in the hurdles. He says the fastest time in Georgia ever in high school. And this young lady went on. So this is my nephew I was telling you about that had 2% body fat and ran a 4.3 40-yard dash. And he's a 110-meter hurdle champ every school he went to. His problem was he kept changing schools. And I told him to go one place and stay. And so you lose out when you keep changing schools, but you won the high hurdles. He had 2% body fat, 6'3", 221, 4.3 40-yard dash. So my high school in Mississippi wanted me to start them on vitamin D. And then they asked me if they could play Martin Luther King High School here in Atlanta, Georgia. I told them, no way, you all will get killed. It's like men playing boys. Y'all not ready. These guys been on vitamin D in Georgia for years. You just starting them, I said I would not recommend that at all. This is me, and this is Arden Key. He plays with the Charlotte Jaguars now. This guy is 6'6", ran a 4.5 40-yard dash. He could run a quarterback down sideline to sideline. And so all these other guys, except me and this guy and these guys, these are their former high school coaches. But all these guys made it to the pros from Martin Luther King High School. And you see, I'm 6'2", and I'm probably the shortest guy in the picture. So these were when they were in college. This is the guys at LSU. He's a sack leader there. So I could basically turn on the TV at almost any team at the time and see some form of vitamin D players. Then use it in basketball. So the opposing coach playing my high school team, he said I'd never seen a team that quick on defense. He said he needed 8 men on the field to guard Gentry's fast teams. So this is by Karen Cook. She's an NFL journalist. So she came down to Atlanta to see what I was doing. She covered the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is her article, Fact or Fiction, Concussion-Free Football Season. So year before they had 5 concussions, so had 0 concussions a year before. Uh, they went 13-1 that year, and like I said, 64 and during this 3 period, 64 students received basically D1 scholarships. So it's written by Karen Cook, NFL sports journalist. She wanted to do a documentary. So this is another article, concussion-free football season. So vitamin D decreases concussions. This is my sister. She's elementary principal in Mississippi. And so 80% of, almost 100% of our kids are on free lunch. And probably 50% of them were on Ritalin. You know, I went to her school one day, she's passing out Ritalin. I said, "You're not a nurse, so you're going to get her own medication and stuff." So she basically only after 2 years, so I found a universal, and we put our kids on high dose vitamin D and nutritional or multivitamin. So after nutritional report, school officials had a drastic drop in absence of behavioral problems. So the first year I started working with the school, they had 1,992 absences. Then that number dropped to just 92 just 2 years later. So she had fewer kids out sick with colds and flus, or they started having behavioral problems. And they actually went from a school on probation to a school to level 2. Then it even went on up into high school. A lot of those kids actually did well on the ACT test and went to college. I've spoken at the CDC 2 times. I've been invited back this November for a third time. I've spoken at the FDA 6 times. So the FDA has 11,000 employees, and almost everybody's on vitamin D at the FDA, and a lot of them at the CDC were taking it. But I find it's amazing. Most of these people at these 2 institutions are vitamin D, but they never told the American public about vitamin D for coronavirus. So I guess they're just waiting on the shot. So this, spoke 6 times at the FDA. And this is working with the military. This is a 4-star general. So this is from 1 to 4-star general. So actually, I told military that vitamin D deficiency is a national security threat. And they said, "How so?" And so what people don't know in history, the free lunch program back in when World War II started, it was started by the military because we had unhealthy kids. They were not fit to be in the army. So the nutritional program was started to get teenagers healthy so they could go fight in the war. So nutritional program in school, free nutrition, is not started to just give people food. It was started so we have healthy soldiers. Like right now, 80% of our teenagers are unfit for military duty due to drugs, too many kids, being unhealthy, vitamin D deficient. So military, when I spoke to them back in 2012, they were spending $200 million just on stress fractures alone for the basic recruits, and then for Navy SEALs and special forces, because they have to carry these 80-pound sacks on their back. So vitamin D deficiency increases the amount of stress fractures. So a lot of these soldiers were out, had to have operations, they was in physical therapy. And so I have to explain to them, all basic recruits now take vitamin D. And they have 4 boot camps in the United States for Army recruits, and all 4 bases, they have like a nutritional bar that has 2,000 IUs of vitamin B. So they really accepted that and stuff. And so, like I said, it's a 4-star general. So actually, when I met with the military, I told them something that kind of shocked all of them. I said, if you send me to war college, or I had a war college training, I said I would beat every one of you in Army training at the battalion level. And they said, "What makes you think that?" I said, "Well, if I know what you know militarily," I said, "my soldiers would be stronger, faster, they could go longer." And actually, they have a paper that was produced saying soldiers with higher vitamin D levels, it cuts the risk of suicide by 50%. So vitamin D is important in soldiers and cutting PTSD, cutting suicides. Every day we have 22 soldiers that commit suicide. So now they're just really looking and investigating all the various facts of vitamin D. Since 2012, they just wrote an article this year saying now it's time for them to put all the military on vitamin D, and then it'll heal their brain injuries also. So they get a lot of brain injuries from bomb concussions and stuff like that. So it'll help them that way too. But they asked me, "You must have a big team working with you." I said, "You looking at it?" I said, "I'm the team." This is like the Honorable Bill Walker. He used to be the governor of Alaska. So Alaska was the first state out of all 50 states to write statewide legislation for vitamin D. So they live up in North Pole, basically. And so everybody, almost 100% of people in Alaska are vitamin D deficient. So they instituted a program trying to get everybody on vitamin D, and they understood the importance. And this is the legislator that wrote for it. This is like Martin Luther King III. This is Dick Gregory. They were both on vitamin D. Dick Gregory was before he died. Martin Luther King's on vitamin D. This is my mom. She was 92 at the time. And if you notice, look how smooth my mom's skin is. And she was an advocate for high dose vitamin D. And she died at 93, and she still remembered all 11 of her kids' birthday. And I can't even remember my own birthday. And so then this her, she's on a walker. When she was like 89, she fell and broke her pelvis in 2 places. So an 89-year-old female does not walk again after breaking their pelvis. They end up dead the rest of their life, and most of them dead within 6 months from blood clots, pneumonia. And so she went back to her doctor exactly at 6 weeks, and he x-rayed her pelvis, and her pelvis was completely healed, and he thought the x-ray tech had taken x-rays of the wrong picture. So my mom probably was the biggest vitamin D advocate. Mine was still strong, and then she was able to walk, up until her death, basically. You see how smooth her skin is. She has no wrinkles anywhere. She was a healthy eater all her life. She basically grew her own food, grew her own garden until she was about 85. And so she ate all natural food. She didn't eat processed food like we do, McDonald's and pizzas and stuff. And so she lived a long, healthy life after having 12 kids. This is my dad. He sang with B.B. King. They had a group called the St. John Gospel Singers from 1942 to 1946. So here they are, a bunch of teenagers in Mississippi. So they were the first group to integrate radio in Mississippi. And so you can imagine in 1942, Mississippi, a bunch of teenagers coming in some churches with a guitar. This was considered devil's music. So actually, they wanted to become gospel singers and do an album and go nationally. But they never made any money singing the gospel. But B.B. King would go up on Church Street on Sunday nights and make tons of money singing the blues. So he really wanted to become a gospel singer instead of a blues, but he couldn't make any money doing gospel. So he left Mississippi in 1946 and went to Memphis and became B.B. King and stuff. And so but they were known as the world famous gospel singers and stuff. And one question I never asked my dad, I wondered how many churches did they get run out of for trying to come in with a guitar. But the churches that they did sing in, they were well known. Okay, so this is B.B. King back in about 3 years before he passed. He came to Atlanta, Georgia, just backstage. He did a concert. He was on vitamin D at the time. This is my uncle, went to school with Martin Luther King from Mississippi. He had never even seen a microscope when he went to Morehouse at college. He had dinner at the White House with President Clinton and President Bush. So he dined with 2 presidents, and like I say, went to school with Martin Luther King, and that's my parents when they first got married. So my pedigree, this gentleman here, Dr. Wilhelm Koch, actually invented dialysis. So this is his son, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon that trained me and stuff. And so it's amazing when you could train under the man whose dad actually invented dialysis back in the 1940s and stuff. And so This is him at a later age and stuff. So God blessed me with some great mentors, and so I trained under people. This is Dr. Arthur Guyton. He published the Guyton textbook of medical physiology. So Dr. Guyton was basically a surgical resident. He was stricken with polio his third year training, so he switched over to physiology research. This man was a genius. He put all 10 of his kids through medical school. All 10 of them graduated from Harvard Medical School. He actually should have won a Nobel Prize. He came along when doctors believed, worldwide, they believed that it was the heart that determined the blood pressure. So Guyton was the first kid on the block to say it's your kidneys that regulate your blood pressure. Kidneys regulate blood pressure by actually getting rid of fluid and producing hormones to regulate your blood pressure. This is Dr. Hardy. He did the first lung transplant in the world, but that in Jackson, Mississippi, where I went to medical school. But it was the same date that Medgar Evers was assassinated. So they brought Medgar Evers into the University of Mississippi, and Dr. Hardy's groundbreaking research got moved to the back page. He did the first double lung transplant. He wrote Hardy's textbook of surgery. So I trained under some giants that taught us to think outside the box. This is at Mayo Clinic. So I was on staff at Mayo Clinic, and invited me to a healthcare policy meeting. I'm standing next to the former CEO of Mayo Clinic. So when I did my presentation on vitamin D, Dr. Cortese said, he said, Ray, remind me one thing. He said, if I ever fall out the sky, make sure I'm grading you on call. And this is his chief executive officer. So I became great friends with him. I actually asked both of them to build a Mayo Clinic, and actually wrote a proposal and got the governor of Mississippi, all the senators, congressmen, and the state of Mississippi in my hometown was going to donate 500 acres of land. But Dr. Cortese and Bob Smokes, they were near their retirement age, and they said they didn't want to build a new Mayo Clinic, but we became good friends after that. And they told me that was the best proposal they had ever seen, with everything intact. They wouldn't have to pay a penny and would have gotten all type of tax breaks. But we're still friends to this day. So that's Dr. Cortese has been a excellent mentor, role model. Talking to him. Well, actually, I mean, at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, they have 55,000 employees. And they have a college-like campus and 2 hospitals with 2,000 beds. So it's a huge facility. You need a bus to get around this place. Then for a guy that's like this, or a man like this, to take time to meet with me for lunch, I found that just unbelievable when there are 55,000 employees, and Bob and I, all 3 of us would meet for lunch, and they were very impressed with me, and we still communicate, keep in touch. So this is me published in New England Journal of Medicine. Like I said, very few surgeons can say they were published in New England Journal of Medicine. God has blessed me with a good career to be everywhere, basically. So the governor of Mississippi back in 1996, Governor Fordyce, was in a near fatal automobile accident, and coming out of Memphis, Tennessee, going back to Jackson. Had a car crash. His SUV rolled off the road, and it was fiery on fire. So they brought him into the Grenada Lake emergency room where I was. He had a collapsed lung, severed his ear off, inhalation, smoke injury, had a cardiac contusion or heart bruise. So basically, I saved his life. Then another native, Trees Fordyce, and I was still a 4th-year resident in training at the time. And my chairman had a rule that he didn't want you to work on your vacation and stuff. So I used to go home and work the whole 2 weeks, moonlighting. And so this hit national news and stuff. And so I had to tell my chairman I was working on my vacation. And so he just laughed. He couldn't do nothing but laugh. And that's Royal Society of Medicine again. I spoke at the Congressional Black Caucus. This is the last slide here. And this is another patient that was riding a bicycle. He was hit by a car, broke 35 bones in his body. His heart rate was getting up to 200. I put him on medications to control his heart rate. He had a bad traumatic brain injury. He's a stockbroker. And after we got him well, he went back to work. He actually got a raise and a higher level. He was actually smarter after the vitamin D. And you see my patients were making the news. They're on billboards and they're on the side of buses. They've done stories on them because we were just saving patients that basically shouldn't have survived. So thank you for having me. And these are my references. And vitamin D is a hormone, so everybody should be taking vitamin D from the cradle to the grave. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. What a wonderful presentation. We
Thank
certainly
you.
appreciate having you. Wow, it's so great. So again, thank you. Let me
Thanks for
bring
having me.
Yes, let me bring you some questions. The first is, can vitamin D help someone with fatty liver disease? And if so, what dosage would you recommend?
It I have not seen a lot of help with fatty liver disease and stuff because once liver get past a certain point, you need a liver transplant. And but overall health, it can cut down on the infections, because when your liver is not working well, you start getting more infections. It can help you with it can help indirectly with infections and stuff like that. But there are some supplements that you can get for your liver over the counter. I'm trying to think what's the name of the supplement. I can't think of it right now, but they work. They actually have at the health food stores. They actually have supplements for. It has on the bottle for fatty liver or sclerosis or stuff like that. So they have things for that, but it won't help directly, but it indirectly will.
Okay. Next question. Will a person get enough vitamin D from their multivitamin?
No, vitamin D, your multivitamin only has 6 to 800 international units and stuff. And so when I first started doing my research, they said 2000 was too much or toxic. I take 5,000 IUs a day, and then the like larger 300 pounders, I have them on 10,000 IUs a day. So once you start getting over like 20,000, 30,000 a day, that's when I tell people cut it. But there are not enough in so actually I take multivitamin and vitamin D every day.
So 5,000 IUs would be recommendable for people?
It depends on the size. Like for a newborn baby, maybe 1,000 IUs, and they have the liquid form. You can put it in their milk and their juice. Then I recommend they stay on 1,000 to at least 10, 12, and then maybe go up to 2,000 by 12. And then once you get to be 18, go up to 5,000 and stuff. But if you're a small person, weigh 80 pounds, you don't need but 2,000 stuff. So it's kind of weight dependent too.
Okay. After skin color and time spent outside, what are the factors that affect how much vitamin D you get naturally?
That's a very good question. Actually, I have a list of about 30 or 40 things that affect your vitamin D levels, like your skin color, drugs like steroids, HIV medications affect that. Like you said earlier, fatty liver, cirrhosis of the liver, because when you make vitamin D, that compound has to go first to your liver, then it goes to your kidney. So if you got a bad liver, you can't make vitamin D, or a bad kidney, you can't make vitamin D. So basically, all dialysis patients are usually on vitamin D by their the dialysis doctor. In the Middle East, the women wear the long burqas, so the only thing that's exposed are their eyes. I've gone to Dubai 3 or 4 times. Dubai is one of the wealthiest country in the world. There's only 1 million citizens, but about 5 million people live in the country. All the citizens of Dubai get at least $1 million because they have so much oil. They're rich. But it's so hot over there, it gets up to 115, 120 degrees. And so they have parks and they only walk at nighttime. So it's a safe country, so you don't have to worry about getting robbed or any crazy thing like you do in America. So their vitamin D levels are in the toilet. You would think a wealthy country where everybody has health insurance, they would have the highest vitamin D levels. All the women are vitamin D deficient. They have a lot of birth problems. The men are vitamin D deficient. Most of them get diabetes by the age of 35. Obviously wearing long clothes, no exposure to the sun ever hardly can cause vitamin D deficiency. Not go out. Some people don't go outside ever. Older people, once you get 70, you can only produce 25% of the vitamin D that a younger person can. A patient with massive burns that have like a lot of burn injuries and stuff, their skin can make vitamin D. A lot of drinking or alcohol can cut your vitamin D level. So it's a lot of different factors that can affect.
Okay. What's the impact of vitamin D overdosing, and can taking it with calcium help?
I recommend, unless you're just severely hypocalcemic and your doctor puts you on it, most people are not hypocalcemic. So most people do not need calcium or vitamin K and stuff. And so, because you're not vitamin K deficient, nor are you vitamin C, or calcium deficient. I just take mine alone. But I'll tell you what happened though. I was taking K years ago and stuff, and I ended up with a blood clot in my leg and stuff from taking K, because K helps with blood clot. And so people with heart attacks, strokes, and stuff like that definitely should not take K, and you don't need calcium unless your doctor prescribed it or you severely hypocalcemic. And then about vitamin D toxicity, only people that really have become vitamin D toxic or in cases where the bottle was mislabeled. I think one person, it was like hundreds of thousands of vitamin D, but it was labeled wrong from the place that they got it. And so symptoms that you see with vitamin D toxicity, you can get kidney stones, you can get moans, bones, and groans, as we say. You can get abdominal pain. If your level gets too high, which is like usually over 200 or something, you can get confusion, you can get seizures and death and coma. But vitamin D toxicity is very rare. Um, Half of the world is vitamin D deficient. So vitamin D toxicity, you can get some symptoms, but I don't know anybody that's died from vitamin D toxicity, but I know plenty of people with vitamin D deficiency. Remember I said when your level get less than 18 nanograms per milliliter in vitamin D deficiency, the risk of death goes up 30%. So thousands, no, millions of people have died from vitamin D deficiency. So that's a way bigger problem than vitamin D toxicity.
Idea using large quantities of vitamin D infusion for cancer patients, perhaps instead of chemo or radiation. Do you think that would be effective?
Okay, it's best to take it PO. So even our patients in the unit, they're on the ventilators, we dumped it down their NG tubes, or if they had feeding tubes, pigs, we put it in there. They have an IV form, but it's way more expensive. You can't control the concentration of it well, and so you don't know what concentration once you get blood draws that is going to be. But I can determine basically what your level is going to be with a PO form. So PO form is what we use. I don't even use the IV form. But it'll work in all cancers, like you said, because you're on the slide where I showed you from Mayo Clinic is important in prevention and treatment. And so one thing about Mayo Clinic, having been there and been on staff, you don't put out false research and you get flogged. Or, they're reputable. They're one of the most honest, reputable places I've ever been and stuff. And so they do quality research. That's why they rank #1. So they actually have teams that study vitamin D after, me being having been on staff there, and it's like, wow. And so they started, getting more active in vitamin D.
Would you say that there are benefits to nebulized vitamin D in ventilator patients?
You can't get the concentration and stuff, so I just dump it down the tubes. You'll get, but you'll get an erratic concentration. So with vitamin D, you want to get the right concentration to special sick patients immediately. You don't want to have like high concentration today, low concentration, or just low, then gradually. You want to get that vitamin D on fast, because remember I said in 24 hours your level has decreased by 50%. So you need to be getting them high doses. Like we use a 50,000 I use, and they thought I was completely crazy and stuff. And so we would give them like 50,000 I use like 7 days straight. And guess what? Guess how many patients we ever had that were toxic? Zero. because like I said, within the first day and then, if you don't give them vitamin D, the level steady dropping. And during the length of the illness, you're chewing up more and more vitamin D because remember I said vitamin D is an anti-stress hormone. So anytime your body is stressed, it needs more vitamin D. Whether you're pregnant, just imagine most women that are pregnant or trying to take care of a baby. So the baby is going to siphon off his vitamin D. If the mom is nine, that's why a lot of women get postpartum depression. They don't have any energy. They're moody, so it affects your mood. Remember, it says neuro cognition also involved in vitamin D and stuff. And so it is very important, in all phases of your life. Every cell and every tissue in your body, and we have trillions of cells, has vitamin D receptors. No other substance in your body has receptors on every cell and every tissue in your body.
You can get from sunlight. Is it necessary to buy vitamin D to supplement?
Well, for me, it was like I said, being a trauma surgeon, I worked 80 to 100 hours a week for 32 years. So when am I ever going to get outside? So I was, when I started, 20, 30 years ago, I was vitamin D deficient, and actually I got a stress fracture because I was on my feet all the time and stuff. So I don't know everybody's schedule, but if you work like I did, you need to supplement. But most Americans work indoors now. We have air conditioning. All of us are computer geeks now. We're on our smartphones all day. And so very few people get outdoors. So I would say most people need to supplement. And you don't get enough from your multivitamin.
Okay. Is there a right type of or brand of vitamin D that you would recommend?
I'm not advertising for anybody, but I just go to Publix or Walmart or Targets and buy them over the counter. Some of the brands I buy, Nature's, was it Nature's Sundown and Nature's brand or something. But it doesn't matter. Most of them are pretty reputable.
Okay. So let's see. Is high dose vitamin D a prescription only product?
I think Sam's Club used to sell them, and but most of them are you have to get a doctor's prescription.
I want to ask this one again. We went over this a moment ago, but I'm going to do it again.
Sure.
What is good to take with vitamin D? K2, zinc, boron,
Magnesium is good.
magnesium.
Yeah, magnesium actually, when you're vitamin D deficient, usually you're going to be magnesium deficient. And
Okay.
so I take like 500 milligrams of magnesium a day personally because they work well together. You can absorb vitamin D a little better when you add magnesium to it, but you can take it with a multivitamin. I take a multivitamin, vitamin C. I probably take like 20 supplements a day. And
Mhm.
so it doesn't interact with anything. I've never seen anybody allergic to vitamin D. I've never seen it interact with any doctor's prescription medication at all.
Is there a best time of day to take vitamin D?
I take mine when I get up because once I get up and get going, I'm active, and sometimes I don't shut down at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'm always going. So I get up and take it either with a glass of milk or a glass of juice or something in the morning, because I need that energy all day because I'm just constantly going.
Okay. Is there any problem in the market with the purity of vitamin D over the counter?
Like I said, if you deal with sundials, nature, was it nature value or something is nature? Like I said, Walmart has good brands, so all their brands are reputable. I just go to the counter buy them at Walmart.
How does vitamin D affect chronic kidney disease?
Um, Remember, you need the liver. You need several things. You need healthy skin, and to make vitamin because the skin has absorbed the sunlight, and then that cholesterol makes a cholesterol molecule that goes to the liver first. So if you got cirrhosis of the liver, alcoholic liver disease, fatty liver disease, you're going to decrease. What it does is it puts a chemical compound, a hydroxy group, oxygen and a hydrogen on that cholesterol compound. Then it sends that compound to the kidney where it puts another hydrogen and oxygen on that. So you get two hydroxy groups placed at the 1 and the 25 position. And so all people that have kidney disease or their kidneys don't make vitamin D as well. So they're everybody on dialysis is using on vitamin D. and stuff. So their doctor usually prescribe them. So I don't tell the kidney patients what to do. I just tell them to do what the doctor tells them to do. And but they are all vitamin D deficient though.
Does vitamin D affect serotonin levels in the brain? Do you know?
I've read papers that says it does, but I hadn't done any research in it.
Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Matthews, thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you for having me. It's been a
World of
pleasure.
information. Yes. Next
Okay.
month, our service will be in Zoom, August 22nd,
Mhm.
with an open microphone night. If you have a short 5-8 minute presentation, please contact me and we'll add you to our list for this event. We'll be in Zoom only until October. I'd like to thank you for attending this month. And again,
Thank you.
share this recording with of this event with all of the people that you care about.
Okay.
And join us again next month for another presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I enjoyed it.
First sunlight to superpowers, we're evolving hour by hour. Dr. Matthews shows the way, vitamin D, our DNA's at play. Transcend your limits, reach for the sky. Vitamin D, our bodies amplify. In the church of perpetual life, we arise, optimize humans before our eyes. Beyond the bounds of biology, we're writing a new anthology. Unlock the power within your cells. Vitamin D, our potential swells. Transcend your limits, reach for the sky. Vitamin D, our bodies amplify. In the church of perpetual life, we arise, optimize humans before our eyes. Beyond the bounds of biology, we're writing a new anthology. Unlock the power within your cells. Vitamin D, our potential swells. Transcend your limits, reach for the sky. Vitamin D, our bodies amplify. In the church of perpetual life, we arise, optimize humans before our eyes. From critical care to cognitive heights, we're pushing through to new insights. Join the revolution, let's redefine the future of humankind. In this virtual gathering, we unite to embrace a future that's bright. With Dr. Matthews as our guide, our enhanced selves we can't hide. Transcend your limits, reach for the sky. Vitamin D, our bodies amplify. In the church of perpetual